The shuttle descended through the docking bay of the Galactic Council station with the quiet hum of human engineering. Inside, Ambassador Catherine Moore straightened her diplomatic uniform and took a slow breath. She had prepared for this moment for 3 years. Humanity's first formal appearance before the Galactic Council. The first step toward full membership among the stars. Beside her sat Daniel Price and Samantha Wells. They wore simple gray uniforms with no armor plating, no tactical gear, and most notably, no weapons of any kind. Daniel was a tall man in his early 30s, with short brown hair and calm blue eyes that rarely blinked. Samantha was slightly shorter, with dark hair pulled back in a practical knot and hands that rested loose and relaxed on her knees. "Remember," Catherine said quietly, "we are here to make friends." Daniel nodded once. Samantha's lips curved into a small smile, but she said nothing. The shuttle doors opened, and the 3 humans stepped onto the polished floor of the council station. The air smelled faintly of recycled atmosphere and something sweet that Catherine could not identify. Lights embedded in the ceiling shifted colors as they walked, tracking their movement. Alien security protocols, she assumed. The welcome delegation was already waiting. There were 5 species represented, each one stranger than the last. The Vektari stood tallest, their bodies made of living crystal that caught the light and scattered it into rainbows. Their leader, High Speaker Zorthan, towered nearly 8 feet tall and regarded the humans with eyes like polished gemstones. Beside the Vektari clustered the Kethri, insectoid creatures with segmented bodies, multiple arms, and compound eyes that reflected everything at once. They clicked their mandibles in what might have been greeting or might have been commentary. The Morathi ambassador was harder to look at directly. Its body was gelatinous, constantly shifting and reforming, with no fixed shape. It communicated through vibrations that the translation matrix converted to speech. Near the back stood representatives of the Thalani, tall and willowy beings with skin like bark and movements like swaying trees. And finally, seated in a hover chair due to her advanced age, was Elder Coordinator Ithoval of the Solani. She had 4 arms, a face dominated by large dark eyes, and an expression that suggested she had seen everything the universe had to offer and found most of it. Disappointing. High Speaker Zor then stepped forward, his crystalline body chiming softly with each movement. "Ambassador Moore," he said, his voice resonating through the translation matrix like bells ringing underwater. "Humanity is welcome to the Galactic Council Station. We hope your journey was acceptable." "It was, High Speaker. Thank you for receiving us." Catherine extended her hand in the human gesture of greeting. Zorthan studied it for a moment before extending one of his own crystalline appendages. The handshake was awkward, but completed without incident. Then Zorthan's gemstone eyes shifted to Daniel and Samantha. He studied them for a long moment, and Catherine could see the confusion forming in his alien features. "These are your guards?" he asked. "They are. They carry no weapons." It was not a question. Catherine nodded anyway. "That is correct." A ripple of reaction passed through the assembled aliens. The Kethri clicked rapidly among themselves. The Morathi ambassador quivered in what the translation matrix identified as amusement. Even the stoic Thalani swayed slightly, their bark-like faces showing something close to surprise. Zorthan's tone shifted, becoming something that hovered between confusion and contempt. "Ambassador, perhaps there has been a misunderstanding. The Galactic Council Station hosts representatives from over 40 species. Some of these species have conflicts dating back thousands of years. Security incidents, while rare, do occur. Your guards are permitted to carry defensive weapons. Indeed, it is expected." Catherine kept her expression pleasant. "I appreciate the information, High Speaker. However, my guards are more than sufficient as they are." "Sufficient?" One of the Kethri delegates stepped forward, his mandibles clicking sharply. Forgive my bluntness, Ambassador, but your guards appear to be standard biological specimens. No armor, no augmentation that our scanners can detect. No weapons. His compound eyes glittered. How exactly do you expect them to protect you? Daniel and Samantha remained motionless, their faces betraying nothing. Catherine smiled. I expect them to do their jobs, delegate. That is all. The Kethri made a sound that the translation matrix rendered as laughter. Several other delegates joined in. The Morathi ambassador's body wobbled with what appeared to be barely contained mirth. Only. Elder Ithavel remained silent. Catherine noticed the old Solani watching, her guards with an intensity that the others lacked. Her forearms were folded tightly against her thorax, and her large dark eyes moved slowly between Daniel and Samantha, studying them the way a scientist might study a dangerous specimen. The welcome delegation began moving toward the main corridor, and Catherine fell into step beside Zorthan. The High Speaker seemed determined to educate her on the realities of galactic politics. Humanity is a young species, he said, not unkindly. 300 years of space travel is barely a moment in cosmic terms. The Vectari have sailed between stars for 12,000 years. The Solani even longer. You will learn, in time, that strength must be displayed to be respected. I understand your perspective, High Speaker. Do you? Your species has potential, Ambassador. But potential means nothing if you are killed before it can be realized. The galaxy is not a kind place. It does not reward idealism. Behind them, Daniel and Samantha walked in perfect synchronization, their footsteps quiet on the polished floor. Their eyes moved constantly, tracking every shadow, every movement, every possible threat. They did not speak. They did not need to dot as the delegation passed through a security checkpoint. Scanners swept over them. The Vectari guards operating the checkpoint noted the absence of weapons on the human guards and exchanged glances. One of them made a comment in the Vectari language that the translation matrix did not render, but the tone was clear enough. Mockery. Daniel's expression did not change. Samantha's hands remained loose at her sides. Elder Ithavel watched them pass through the checkpoint, and for just a moment, her dark eyes met Catherine's. Something passed between them. An understanding, perhaps, or a warning. Then the moment passed, and the delegation continued on. That evening, after the formal introductions were complete, and Catherine had been shown to her quarters, she sat alone with her guards in the small human embassy suite. The room was sparse, but functional, designed to accommodate species with widely varying needs. They think we are fools, Samantha said quietly. It was the first time she had spoken since landing. Let them, Catherine replied. Underestimation is a gift. Daniel stood by the window, looking out at the stars. The Solani elder knows something. She was watching us differently than the others. Catherine nodded. I noticed. The Solani have been part of the galactic community longer than almost anyone. They have access to information the others do not. Should we be concerned? Catherine considered the question. No. If she knows what humans are capable of, then she also knows we are not here to cause trouble. We are here to join the community, not threaten it. And if someone threatens us? Samantha asked. Catherine looked at her two guards. These two ordinary-looking humans who carried no weapons and wore no armor. She thought about what they really were. What all humans really were, underneath their polite smiles and diplomatic language. Then they will learn why weapons are unnecessary, she said simply. Outside the window, the stars burned cold and distant. The Galactic Council station hummed with the activity of 40 species going about their business. Most of them convinced that humanity was a naive young race that would soon learn hard lessons about the universe. They were half right. Humanity would indeed teach lessons, but not the kind anyone expected. 3 days passed on the Galactic Council Station. Catherine Moore attended meetings, smiled at delegates who barely hid their condescension, and slowly built the case for human membership. It was tedious work, but she was patient. Humans had waited 300 years to reach the stars. A few more weeks of politics would not break them. The negotiations were held in the Central Conference Annex, a vast circular chamber with seating arranged in rising tiers. Representatives from dozens of species gathered there each day to debate, argue, and occasionally threaten each other over matters of trade, territory, and ancient grudges. Catherine sat in the human delegation's assigned section, a modest space near the lower tiers. Daniel stood to her left, Samantha to her right. They had not moved from those positions in 3 days, except to escort her to and from the embassy suite. The other delegates had stopped commenting on the unarmed guards. The joke had grown old. Now they simply ignored the humans, which Catherine considered progress. On the morning of the 3rd day, High Speaker Zorthan was in the middle of a lengthy speech about mineral rights in the outer territories when the first explosion shook the chamber. The blast came from the main entrance, blowing the heavy doors inward in a shower of twisted metal. Screams erupted from a dozen species. The Morathi ambassador immediately liquefied, spreading across the floor in a defensive puddle. The Thalani delegates froze in place, their bark-like skin hardening into protective shells. The Victari guards stationed around the chamber moved toward the source of the explosion, their crystalline bodies humming with energy. Through the smoke and debris came the attackers. There were 12 of them, all Kethri. They wore black tactical armor and carried plasma weapons that glowed with deadly energy. Their compound eyes scanned the chamber with predatory focus, and their mandibles clicked in rapid communication. "Extremists," Daniel said quietly. His voice was calm, almost casual. "Kethri, faction opposed to human integration. Intel mentioned them." "I remember the briefing," Catherine replied. Her heart was pounding, but she kept her voice steady. The extremists moved fast. 2 of them fired at the Victari guards, and the crystalline beings shattered under the plasma bursts, their bodies exploding into glittering fragments. The other attackers spread through the chamber, herding the panicking delegates toward the center. One of them spotted the human delegation. "There," he hissed, pointing with one of his 4 arms. "The humans? Take them alive. Their deaths must be public." 6 of the attackers broke away from the main group and advanced on the human section. Their weapons were raised, their movements confident. They had planned this carefully. They knew the human guards were unarmed. They knew this would be easy. Daniel stepped in front of Catherine. He did not reach for a weapon because he did not have one. He did not call for help because none would come in time. He simply moved, placing his body between the ambassador and the approaching threat, and waited. The lead Kethri stopped a few meters away, mandibles clicking with amusement. "You would stand against us with nothing but your flesh. Humans truly are as foolish as we believed." Daniel did not respond. His breathing slowed. His pupils dilated. Something old and primal stirred behind his calm blue eyes. But Kethri raised his weapon. "Move aside, human. Our quarrel is with your ambassador, not her servants." Daniel remained still. The Kethri's mandibles clicked with irritation. "So be it. Kill him." The nearest attacker lunged forward, reaching to grab Daniel and throw him aside. What happened next would be analyzed by military experts from 17 species. They would slow the footage down frame by frame. They would measure reaction times and force vectors and tactical decisions. And when they were finished, they would quietly classify the recordings and recommend that no species ever give humanity a reason to fight. Daniel moved. His hand shot out and caught the Kethri's reaching arm just below the joint. In a single fluid motion, he twisted and pulled, using the attacker's own momentum against him. The arms snapped backward with a wet cracking sound that echoed through the suddenly silent chamber. The Kethri screamed, a high-pitched shriek that hurt the ears of every species present. Daniel did not stop. He drove his elbow into the face of the second attacker, crushing the compound eye cluster. The Kethri dropped instantly, twitching on the ground. The third attacker tried to bring his plasma weapon to bear, but Daniel was already inside his guard, too close for the weapon to be useful. A palm strike to the throat sent the Kethri stumbling backward, choking. Daniel grabbed the weapon arm, twisted, and broke it at the elbow. The plasma rifle clattered to the floor. Samantha moved at the same moment, flanking to the right with silent speed. She had picked up a broken piece of the conference table, a metal leg about half a meter long. It was not designed to be a weapon. It did not need to be. In her hands, it became an extension of her will, and her will was absolute. She struck the fourth attacker across the knees, dropping him to the floor. Before he could recover, she brought the metal leg down on his weapon hand, shattering chitin and bone. The fifth attacker turned toward her, mandibles clicking in alarm, but Samantha was already moving. She ducked under his wild swing, drove the metal leg into his midsection, and followed with a strike to the side of his head. The sixth attacker tried to run. Daniel caught him. The entire engagement lasted 47 seconds. When it was over, 6 Kethri extremists lay on the floor of the conference annex. Some were unconscious. Some were dead. All of them were broken in ways that would require extensive medical attention to repair. Daniel stood in the center of the carnage. His uniform was stained with alien blood. His hands were slick with it. He was breathing hard, but his eyes were calm, focused, still scanning for threats. Samantha moved back to her position beside Catherine, the bloodied metal leg still in her hand. She was not even breathing hard. The remaining 6 attackers had frozen at the far end of the chamber. They had watched their comrades fall in less than a minute to 2 unarmed humans. Their confidence had evaporated. Their compound eyes darted between Daniel and Samantha with something new in their gleaming surfaces. Fear. "Leave," Daniel said. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the silent chamber. Now? The attackers ran. They shoved past each other in their desperation to reach the exit, abandoning their mission, their weapons, and their wounded comrades. In moments, they were gone, their footsteps fading down the corridor. The conference chamber remained frozen. Dozens of alien delegates stared at the 2 humans with expressions ranging from shock to terror. The Morathi ambassador had solidified into a trembling mass. The Thalani had not moved from their protective shells. Even High Speaker Zorthan, who had witnessed countless conflicts in his long life, stood motionless on his platform, his crystalline body dim with what might have been disbelief. Catherine Moore straightened her jacket. She brushed a speck of dust from her sleeve. Then she looked up at the assembled delegates with a pleasant smile. "Shall we continue the negotiations?" No one answered. In the observation gallery above, Elder Ethave of Zilani sat in her hover chair with her 4 arms folded tightly against her thorax. Her dark eyes studied the 2 human guards, now standing calmly beside their ambassador as if nothing had happened. She had read the classified reports. She had seen the footage from other incidents. She had known what humans were capable of, but knowing and seeing were different things. "So it begins," she murmured to herself in the ancient Solani tongue. "The galaxy learns to fear the soft ones." Below, Daniel Price wiped the blood from his hands with a cloth he had taken from his pocket. His expression was calm, bored, almost. Like a man who had just completed a minor chore, the Galactic Council would never look at humanity the same way again. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was called within hours of the attack. Representatives from every major species gathered in the high chamber, a massive dome at the heart of the station reserved for matters of critical importance. The ceiling displayed a real-time view of the stars outside, and the curved walls were lined with ancient symbols, representing unity and cooperation among species, that none of the delegates felt particularly unified at the moment. High Speaker Zorthan stood at the central podium, his crystalline body flickering with agitated light. Around him, the other delegates shifted and murmured. The Kethri delegation sat in uncomfortable silence, their compound eyes fixed on the floor. The attack had been carried out by their own kind, and the shame of it hung over them like a cloud. But shame was not what had brought the council together tonight. Fear was. "We have all seen the security footage," Zorthan said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "We have all witnessed what the human guards did to the attackers. The council demands an explanation." Ambassador Catherine Moore stood in the human delegation section, flanked as always by Daniel and Samantha. She nodded calmly. "Of course, High Speaker. I have asked Dr. Nathan Cole, our delegation's medical officer, to address your questions." Nathan Cole stepped forward. He was a middle-aged man with graying hair and kind eyes behind simple glasses. He looked like someone who spent his days helping people, not explaining how his species could kill with their bare hands. That contrast was not lost on the assembled delegates. "Thank you, Ambassador." Nathan turned to face the council, his manner relaxed and professional. "I understand there is confusion about what happened today. I will do my best to explain." "Confusion is not the word I would use," Zorthan said coldly. "Two of your species, carrying no weapons and wearing no armor, killed or incapacitated 6 armed Kethri soldiers in less than 1 minute. Our military analysts have reviewed the footage. They cannot explain what they saw." Nathan nodded as if this was a reasonable response. "Let me start with some basic biology. Humans evolved on a planet called Earth. It is what we classify as a high-gravity world with extreme environmental diversity. Our ancestors faced constant threats from predators, disease, natural disasters, and competition from other human groups. This environment shaped our evolution in specific ways." He paused to let the translation matrices catch up, then continued. "Human bone density is approximately 3 times higher than the galactic average for sentient species. Our muscles are designed for explosive power as well as sustained endurance. Our cardiovascular systems can operate at peak combat intensity for extended periods without failure." He smiled slightly. "We are also extremely difficult to kill. Humans have survived injuries that would be instantly fatal to most species. Lost limbs, organ damage, massive blood loss. Our bodies simply refuse to stop functioning until they absolutely must." The chamber was silent. The Kethri delegate who had mocked the human guards 3 days ago sat very still, his mandibles pressed tightly together. "But the physical aspects are only part of the explanation," Nathan continued. "The more important factor is psychological." High Speaker Zorthan leaned forward. "Explain." "Humans have a biological response to threat called the fight or flight reflex. When we perceive danger, our bodies release a chemical called adrenaline into our bloodstream. This chemical has several effects. Our heart rate increases. Blood flow to our muscles increases. Our pain receptors become dulled. Our reaction time accelerates significantly." Nathan spread his hands. "In moments of extreme stress, humans enter what you might call a temporary combat optimization state. Our ancestors needed this to survive encounters with predators. We still have it. And the lack of hesitation?" Zorthan pressed. "Your guards moved instantly. There was no pause for assessment, no visible decision-making process. They simply acted." "That is correct. When a human perceives a direct threat to themselves or someone they are protecting, conscious thought is bypassed. Instinct takes over. Millions of years of evolutionary programming activate, and the human becomes, for lack of a better term, a survival machine. Nathan's voice remained calm, clinical. The guards did not decide to fight. Fighting was the only possible response their minds would allow. A Morathi delegate rippled with distress. This is disturbing. You speak of your own species as if they are dangerous animals. Nathan turned to face the speaker. We are animals, delegate. All sentient species are. The difference is that humans evolved in an environment that punished weakness with extinction. We are what survival made us. Elder Ithival spoke for the first time, her ancient voice cutting through the murmurs. Dr. Cole, I have a question. Of course, Elder. Your guards carried no weapons. This was by choice, not by accident. Why? Nathan glanced at Catherine, who nodded. He turned back to the Elder. A weapon can be taken from you. A weapon can malfunction. A weapon can be detected by scanners and confiscated before it can be used. He gestured toward Daniel and Samantha. A human cannot be disarmed, Elder. The human is the weapon. Everything else is just a tool. The chamber fell completely silent. Nathan continued, his voice soft but clear. Humans have fought wars for most of our history. We have developed countless methods of killing, most of them requiring no tools at all. Our hands, our elbows, our knees, our feet. Our teeth, if necessary. A trained human can kill with almost any part of their body. He paused. Daniel and Samantha are not just trained. They are experts. They have spent their entire adult lives learning how to protect others using nothing but themselves. And they do not need weapons, Zorthan said slowly, understanding finally dawning in his crystalline eyes. Weapons would only slow them down, Nathan confirmed. A human guard with a weapon might hesitate. They might rely on the technology instead of their instincts. They might calculate odds and determine that retreat is the logical option. He shook his head. An unarmed human protecting someone they are sworn to defend does not hesitate, does not calculate, does not retreat, ever. The Cathri delegate, who had led the mocking of the human guards 3 days ago, rose from his seat. His compound eyes were fixed on Daniel and Samantha with an expression that needed no translation. Absolute terror. You brought predators into our station, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Predators wearing the faces of diplomats. Catherine Moore stepped forward, her expression calm but firm. We brought protectors, delegate. Humans do not attack without cause. We do not hunt other species for sport. But when threatened, we respond. That is our nature. That is what kept our ancestors alive when everything on our world wanted them dead. And if we had threatened you? The delegate asked. Catherine met his compound eyes without flinching. Then you would have learned why humans have survived everything the universe has thrown at us. But you did not threaten us, delegate. Extremists from your own species did. And my guards responded with exactly the level of force necessary to end the threat. She glanced at the 6 broken Cathri being treated in the medical bay. No more, no less. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then Elder Ithival spoke again. The council will need time to process this information. I move that we adjourn until tomorrow. The motion passed without debate. As the delegates filed out of the high chamber, giving the human delegation a wide berth. Nathan Cole moved to stand beside Catherine. That went well, he said quietly. Catherine watched the retreating aliens, noting the fear in their body language, the careful distance they kept from Daniel and Samantha. They understand now, she said. Whether that is good or bad remains to be seen. Behind them, Daniel and Samantha stood in their usual positions, silent and watchful. To a casual observer, they looked like ordinary humans. Pleasant, harmless. The Galactic Council now knew better, and that knowledge would change everything. The Galactic Council's Intelligence Division occupied an entire section of the station, hidden behind security protocols that most delegates did not even know existed. Here, analysts from a dozen species worked constantly, gathering information, identifying threats, and preparing reports that shaped the decisions of the Council. In the days following the attack, the Intelligence Division turned its full attention to humanity. They began with the public records, the information humans had voluntarily shared when they first made contact with the galactic community. Population statistics, technological development timelines, cultural summaries, all very polite, all very incomplete. Then they dug deeper. The first classified report was distributed to senior Council members 5 days after the attack. Its contents were so disturbing that 3 delegates requested medical attention after reading it. Humanity, the report revealed, had spent the vast majority of its existence at war, not occasional conflicts, not border disputes or resource competitions like other species experienced. Constant, relentless, devastating war. Humans had fought each other with rocks and sticks, with swords and spears, with guns and bombs, with weapons that could poison the air and water for generations, with weapons that could vaporize entire cities in seconds. They had killed each other by the millions, by the tens of millions, by the hundreds of millions. And they had kept going. The Victari, analyst who compiled the military history section, had to stop 3 times during his work. His crystalline structure destabilized each time he processed the casualty figures from human conflicts. He had seen war. All species had seen war. But nothing in his 12,000 years of racial memory compared to what humans did to each other. The second report focused on human biology in greater detail. It confirmed everything Dr. Nathan Cole had explained, but added context that made the implications far worse. Humans were persistent predators. Their ancestors had hunted by chasing prey for hours, sometimes days, until the target collapsed from exhaustion. While other predators relied on speed or strength or venom, humans simply refused to stop. They followed their prey until it could run no more, then killed it with whatever tools were available. This hunting strategy had shaped everything about the species. Their dense bones allowed them to absorb impacts that would shatter other creatures. Their unique cooling system let them maintain activity levels that would cause fatal overheating in most species. Their pain tolerance was extraordinary. Their ability to function through injury was almost supernatural. The report included footage from human medical archives. A human soldier continuing to fight with 3 bullets lodged in his torso. A human athlete finishing a race on a broken leg. A human parent lifting a vehicle weighing over 2 tons to free a trapped child. The analysts had no explanation for that last one. The human body should not have been capable of such a feat, but it had happened. It had been documented, and it suggested that humans could access reserves of strength that their normal physiology should not allow. The third report was the one that truly frightened the Council. It focused on human psychology, specifically the concept of protective instinct. Humans, the report explained, formed intense emotional bonds with other individuals. These bonds created what humans called family, tribe, pack. The terms varied, but the underlying reality was the same. When a human identified another being as part of their group, something fundamental changed in their psychology. They would die for that being. Not might die. Not could die. Would die. Without hesitation. Without calculation. Without any consideration of personal survival. The report included hundreds of documented cases. Human parents throwing themselves between their children and danger. Human soldiers sacrificing themselves to save comrades. Human strangers risking their lives to protect people they had never met simply because those people needed help. This concept, which humans called love or loyalty or duty, had no equivalent in most galactic species. The Marathi had protective instincts, but they were tied to genetic investment. A Marathi would defend offspring that carried its genetic material, but not others. The Vektari bonded with their crystalkin, but these bonds could be broken if circumstances demanded it. The Kethri functioned as part of a hive, but individual Kethri could be sacrificed without emotional impact on the collective. Humans were different. A human who had formed a protective bond would fight until they were physically incapable of continuing. They would accept any injury, endure any pain, face any odds. The survival instinct that should have made them flee was overwritten by something stronger, and they could form these bonds with anyone. Not just blood relatives, not just members of their own species. Anyone they decided belonged to their group. The intelligence analysts flagged this as a critical security consideration. A human who had bonded with an alien could be as dangerous in that alien's defense as in their own. The implications for interspecies relations were significant and largely unexplored. Representative Lavra Chun was brought before the council to address these findings. She was Catherine's deputy, a woman with steady hands and eyes that missed nothing. She stood in the high chamber and listened to the summary of the intelligence, reports without expression. When the summary was complete, High Speaker Zorthan asked the obvious question. Is this accurate? Do humans truly form these bonds and fight to the death for them? Laura nodded. It is accurate, High Speaker. And your guards? Daniel Price and Samantha Wells? They have formed such bonds with Ambassador Moore? They have. The chamber stirred with unease. Zorthan pressed on. What does that mean, exactly? In practical terms? Lavra considered her words carefully. It means that Daniel and Samantha do not view the ambassador as their assignment. They view her as their responsibility, their charge, their person. She paused. In human terms, she is pack. And for their pack, they would die? For their pack, they would kill, Lavra corrected quietly. Dying is easy, High Speaker. Any creature can die. What humans do for their pack is harder. They will use their teeth if they have to. They will use their last breath. They will keep fighting after their bodies have been broken because they... Alternative is allowing harm to come to someone they have sworn to protect. She looked around the chamber at the assembled delegates. You asked why our guards carry no weapons. This is why. A weapon is external. It can be lost, broken, taken. But the bond between a human and their pack is internal. It cannot be removed. It cannot be suppressed. It cannot be reasoned with. Her voice softened. Ambassador Moore is not just our diplomat. To Daniel and Samantha, she is family. And humans do terrible things to protect their families. Zorthan's crystalline form flickered with what might have been understanding. Humans kill for their tribe. Humans die for their tribe, Lavra replied. That is far more dangerous. The chamber fell silent in her hovered chair. Elder Ithaval watched Lavra Chun with ancient, knowing eyes. The old Solani had lived for over 800 years. She had seen empires rise and fall. She had witnessed the extinction of species and the birth of new civilizations, but she had never encountered anything quite like humanity. These soft creatures with their fragile looking bodies and their pleasant smiles were not what they appeared. Beneath the surface lurked something primal, something forged in the fires of a world that had tried to kill them every day for millions of years. And now they were here, among the stars, bringing their protective instincts and their capacity for violence with them. YTHVEL wondered if the galaxy was ready. She suspected it was not. 2 weeks after the attack, the Galactic Council reconvened to formally address the question of human membership. The High Chamber was filled to capacity, with representatives from every species present. Some had traveled for days to attend. This was not a session anyone wanted to miss. The atmosphere had changed since the first day of negotiations. The casual condescension that had greeted the human delegation was gone. In its place was something more cautious, more considered. The aliens who had once laughed at the unarmed guards now gave them respectful distance. The delegates who had dismissed humanity as naive, young species now studied them with wary attention. Ambassador Catherine Moore stood in the human section, flanked as always by Daniel Price and Samantha Wells. They wore the same simple gray uniforms they had worn on the first day. They carried no weapons. They did not need to. Everyone in the chamber knew that now. High Speaker Zorthan called the session to order, his crystalline voice echoing through the dome. The Galactic Council is assembled to render judgment on the application of humanity for full membership. All relevant parties are present. We will proceed. The formalities took nearly an hour. Representatives from various factions presented their positions. Some argued for immediate acceptance. Others urged caution. A few quietly suggested that humanity might be better kept at arm's length, observed but not integrated. Through it all, Catherine remained calm. She had done everything she could. The decision now rested with the council. Finally, Elder Ithavol of the Solani rose from her hover chair. Her forearms unfolded slowly, and her ancient eyes swept across the chamber. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of 8 centuries of wisdom. "I will speak for the assembly," she said. "My colleagues have authorized me to deliver our collective judgment." The chamber fell silent. Ithavol turned to face the human delegation directly. Her dark eyes found Catherine's, held them, then moved to Daniel and Samantha. "We have reviewed the evidence," she began. "We have studied your species in detail. We have examined your biology, your history, your psychology, your capacity for violence, and your capacity for connection. We have debated among ourselves for many days, seeking to understand what humanity truly represents." She paused, letting the silence stretch. "We have reached a conclusion." Catherine felt her heart beating faster, though she kept her expression neutral. "Humanity will be granted full council membership," Y2HVEL announced. A ripple of reaction passed through the chamber. Some delegates nodded in approval. Others shifted uneasily. Catherine allowed herself a small breath of relief, but she could see from Ithavol's expression that there was more to come. "However," the elder continued, "we wish to be clear about our reasoning. We are not granting membership because we believe humanity is peaceful. We know now that you are not. Your history is written in blood. Your bodies are weapons. Your instincts are those of predators." The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. "We are not granting membership because we believe you are civilized by our standards. You are something far older, far more primal. You carry within you the echoes of a death world, a planet that tried to destroy you every day for millions of years. You survived. You conquered. You became the dominant species on a world that should have killed you 1,000 times. Over." YFL's eyes moved to Daniel and Samantha once more. "Your guards need no weapons because weapons would only slow them down. Your diplomats need no warships in orbit because your diplomats are warships. You do not send representatives to negotiate. You send warnings wrapped in polite smiles and pleasant handshakes." Catherine said nothing. There was nothing to say. The elder was speaking truth. "We accept humanity not as partners," Ithavol continued, her voice growing softer but somehow more intense. "We accept you as a reminder of what evolution creates when survival is not guaranteed. A reminder of what happens when death itself fails to kill something." She turned to address the full assembly. "Look at them," she said, gesturing toward the human delegation. "They appear soft, harmless. Their guards stand without weapons, without armor, without any visible sign of threat. And yet every species in this chamber now knows the truth. These soft creatures are the most dangerous beings we have ever encountered. No one argued. No one could. Humanity is the universe's answer to a hostile cosmos, HFY concluded. They are what happens when a world wages war on its children for millions of years and the children win. They are survivors. They are protectors. They are, when they choose to be, destroyers. She turned back to Catherine. We grant you membership, Ambassador Moore. We welcome humanity to the Galactic Council. But we do so with clear eyes and honest hearts. We know what you are. We know what you can do. And we accept you anyway, because we have realized a terrible truth. What truth is that, Elder? Catherine asked quietly. HFY's mandibles twitched in what Catherine now recognized as the Solani expression of dark humor. That it is far better to have humanity as friends than as enemies. That the galaxy will be safer with your protection than without it. And that any species foolish enough to threaten you or those you care about will learn very quickly why human guards need no weapons. The chamber was absolutely silent. Catherine inclined her head respectfully. We prefer to think of ourselves as friendly, Elder. Yes, YTVL replied. That is precisely what makes you so terrifying, Ambassador. The friendly ones. The helpful ones. The ones who smile and shake hands and speak of peace and cooperation. Her ancient eyes glittered. And beneath all of it, the capacity for violence that would make our oldest warriors weep in horror. She returned to her hover chair, folding her forearms once more. Welcome to the Galactic Council, humanity. May we never give you reason to show us what you are truly capable of. The session ended shortly afterward. The formal documents were signed. Humanity was officially a member of the galactic community. That evening, the human delegation prepared to return to their shuttle. They would travel back to Earth to report their success, then return to the station to begin the long work of integration. As they walked through the corridors of the station, other species stepped aside to let them pass. Some nodded in greeting. Others simply watched with careful, respectful eyes. A young Kethri diplomat stood in one of the observation galleries, watching the humans depart. Beside him, his elder mentor waited in patient silence. Why? The young one asked. Why would any species evolve to be so dangerous? It seems inefficient, excessive. The elder considered the question. He watched Daniel and Samantha walk in quiet formation behind their ambassador, their movements easy and unhurried. Their eyes constantly scanning for threats that would never come from species now too wise to provoke them. Because their world gave them no choice, he said finally. And the universe is about to learn what happens when creatures with no choice are finally given one. The young Kethri clicked his mandibles nervously. What do you think they will do? The elder was silent for a long moment. I think they will protect, he said. I think they will build. I think they will help and heal and create, because that is what they truly want to do. He paused. But I also think that any threat to what they love will be met with a response so swift and so absolute that even the memory of it will serve as a warning for generations. Below, Ambassador Catherine Moore walked with her unarmed guards toward the docking bay. She was smiling, and somewhere in the observation gallery, an old Kethri felt a chill run down his spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. Humanity had arrived among the stars. The galaxy would never be the same.